Hello, everyone. This is Cindy. Welcome to Twilight Epiphanies Radio, episode 42, and the seventh show in the series, Our Altered Histories. Tonight's show is a little bit different. I'm not going to have an actual guest here that I'm communicating with. I am having Martin Kenny, who is the founder of the Cosmic Egg Universe and Cosmic Clock theories that a lot of us are already familiar with. And he's going to come on the show 2 weeks from now, May 30th. And when he comes on the show, we decided that he wasn't going to be presenting his earlier model of the universe, the cosmic egg theory. And he's interested in working with the cosmic clock, a solar event, his current findings about the moon, and other research that he is onto at this time. So in looking at that, I wanted to bring in his model of the universe as he has presented it to us, which is the cosmic egg universe. It is a geocentric electromagnetic toroidal model of the universe, and he gathered through syncretism different mythologies, a little bit of the Bible, a little bit of science, Vedic scriptures, Norse, Greek, Egyptian, Kemetan mythologies, put that all together and presented a model which is a little bit similar to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where he built this model basically in one of the rooms in his house, and it became bigger and bigger. So he is a bit of a genius here and a great gift to us. So what I'm doing tonight is I'm going to present some excerpts of the significant parts of that model, especially pertaining to what I'm finding is very important for this show series. The show series for me is exciting, very stimulating, and exceptionally interesting because it's filling in different puzzle pieces from especially dream sequences that I've had in the past already. So what I'm going to be doing tonight is playing 3 different sets of Martin's presentations, approximately 15 to 20 minutes of them. And that is because I really feel that this model is significant in helping us to have a visual feel for how we are moving through the construct and what takes place. And because of the fact that I do have already 20 years research and experience in healing work and study and very in-depth look at how this construct works, and especially even conspiracy theories, I began to see how the model is going to be a central point here for these shows in referencing movements, stargates, opportunities, opportunists. A great deal of questions can be answered if we look at this model and begin to apply it to everything that we're familiar with already. I want to say quickly a little bit about myself is that I have a tendency to have an interest in the fairy tales and how they're written and how they've been altered, how they've been utilized, because the fairy tales are basically the stars in the sky moving around into different combinations of endless combinations of experiences. And what has taken place over time that I emphasized in the first show that I did here in this series is that when our times changed and we went into this cycle of time 6,000 years ago and into an Aryan age, the stories that were presented here by energies within human vehicles that became controlling and dominating here, the stories started to get darker. They presented themselves as being more than likely more conflict than they needed to be. And I'm believing and beginning to see that when you have us opening up to what you will see in this presentation here as us having been in an Iron Age, and beginning a consciousness at a certain level, which is a lower level, that when you have infiltrating forces that are falling into our existence here with us, there, I believe, is a certain itinerary that is always followed. And part of that is to come in and confuse with languages, utilize the written word and sound in a matter of distortion that's very significant. And what comes to mind is I recently woke with a dream, and I was looking up, and the sky looked like it was chalk in the sky, and it was all moved around. So there's a combination of the thought of, okay, I'm looking at chemtrails in the sky, but there was a little bit different reference to it. It referenced that the stars were behind there, and what I was looking at were messy footprints. Messy footprints. And there was a caution and a emphasis on those are the footprints of those who have gone before and done this. Okay, so in this time frame that we have been experiencing, and we're coming out of it, a lower consciousness level, I believe there is a very specific itinerary that is followed by infiltrating energies that wish to harvest souls. And we have to be very careful about overly identifying with the negative aspects of the story. And so as we continue in here and fill in pieces, I'm going to be bringing in my own type of referencing in how I'm figuring out, you know, the code to the matrix and how everything works here and how we've been duped. So something that I tend to have watched a lot of was the Netflix series Once Upon a Time. And each time I watch it, I receive a little bit more insight. Now, when I watch for insight, I do not take everything at face value being truth. I look at it that, in my opinion, the controlling factions here who have an itinerary, by default, since they are attempting to be the gods that they are not, in a sense, they are the false gods here. They are attempting to be nature. They're always attempting to mimic the feminine aspects, the nature aspects, even source true aspects that they push to the side in the entrance of patriarchal and left brain thinking. And they must do what nature would do at this time. Nature, source, is going to guide you naturally if you are tuned in. But of course, we're aware that our tuning in has been very interfered with through genetic manipulation. And I don't even need to tell everyone here as to how much we have been interfered with in our connection to listening to true source and listening to our guidance. What it has done is it's put us in a sleep state. The curse, the sleep state. So there's a lot about, I've been thinking and looking at the word curse, it being a spell, it being related to words, it being related to language, and also the understandings that I have in reading parts of the book so far, how language, the alphabet versus the goddess by Leonard Shlain, and what that language did when it became printed. And we went from oral traditions that were more pictures into a linear language being formulated in our minds that we're seeing and what that does to our picture of reality. So I am going to have a show with that on in the future. I'm not sure at what point that's going to be, but I will be emphasizing that more. So what we're looking at in resets and this cyclical event coming up that Martin will be talking about as you hear him in these YouTube excerpts that I'm going to be playing, is there is definitely a cyclical change, but that cyclical change would only be there for our betterment. So if we have had the guidance that we should, and we've been making good decisions, okay, then we are going to fare very well. But if we haven't been making good decisions and we fell prey to lower aspects of ourselves, it's going to be rough. And that is where the confusion gets set in, because a lot of people have assumed they've been doing the right thing. But based on decisions that they have made somewhere that they don't fully understand, that's putting them in a frequency resonance that is affecting how they're going to move through this current time frame of this big cyclical leap we are going to be taking from an Iron Age into a Bronze Age. So in looking at that, I'm going to come back on after these 3 different excerpts that I'm going to show, and I want to talk a little bit about the fact that we can't avoid that if we're going to be in a free will situation, that we have to have the opportunity to determine who we truly are. Because we could have all information handed to us first right off the bat and know who we are, understand reality fully, that if we do such and such, this is what the effect is going to be of it. That fear alone would keep us from doing it. And we would never maybe experience something about ourselves. So in looking at it a little bit deeper, I can find reason for understanding how some information does need to have a little bit of a hidden aspect to it. So we will talk a little bit more about that. So Martin Kenny here in this first video that I'm going to share with you. Let me bring this up here. Okay, so this first video here is his Cosmic Egg Universe Part 1. And why I specifically want to play this, I will blow this up into a full screen here. What I want you to listen to is how Martin has a unique ability to be able to listen loosely as to how we interpret the words that, for example, NASA has used. He does bring it to the attention that it's been a sleight of hand, that they have given us the truth and yet hidden it. But that is important for us to realize, that when we are listening to other people giving their ideas, I think how he presents this information is a good lesson for all of us to learn to listen a little bit more loosely to other people's ideas, for how our ideas are more common than more different. So again, I am going to play this possibly all the way to the end here, which is 14 minutes, maybe a little bit less than that, because I believe that Santos comes on in the very end here. But so take a look here and let's hear what Martin has to say about his model of the universe.
Right. Now that we established that this is what the whole Earth looks like, our entire Earth is a pyramid Bhumandala with 4 concentric rings, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Everything is in 4s in the universe, right? All creation is in 4s in the universe, right? At the center, we've got what we now know as the Garden of Eden. So anyone who's been following our videos will know about this. The Garden of Eden's at the center. This is where we are here, the second ring. There's an outer ring and an outer ring outside that, all separated by these mountains, what we call the Antarctica ice wall. Okay, this is our South Pole, the Antarctica. And the North Pole, there is a mountain range separating us from the worlds at the center, from Eden, from Shambhala, Hyperborea. Okay? And outside they've got their own wall separating from this. This last one has got the greatest one. It's called the Loka Mountains in Vedic scriptures. These are the Loka Mountains, the great mountains, right? And these are the last mountains before the torus field, the cosmic egg. Okay? So beyond this, there is no land. It's the cosmic egg blocking us out from the void outside, right? So let's focus on the center, on where we are and what that might look like. Okay? There's some really important bits. Okay. Around each of these 4 worlds is also a torus field. So remember, this is in a torus field. Each of these worlds also has its own torus field cocooning it. So there's a torus field around this outer world, there's a torus field around this one, there's a torus field around that one, and there's a torus field at the center. Okay? And what that would look like, essentially, is something like this. Okay? From our perspective, from where we are. Right? Almost like those Russian dolls. Right? So there's one at the center, a torus field like that. There's one on the outside, on the outer worlds, a bigger one. Then there's a bigger one on the outside. Right? Now, I noticed something very interesting about this. These toroidal fields, right, are probably oblate spheroids in shape. So when mainstream science and NASA says the Earth is an oblate spheroid, this is what they're telling us. They're kind of telling us a half-truth, right? Which is why they can blatantly lie with a straight face, because they know they're usurping the truth. And when it comes out, they'll just probably say, well, you're too stupid to understand what we're saying, but we're telling you the truth. So this is an oblate spheroid. Underneath where we are, this is where the 4 layers would be: the crust, the mantle, inner core, and outer core. Just like mainstream science says, right? Inner Earth. And above us, we've got the 3 atmospheres within our toroidal field. We've got the troposphere, the stratosphere, right? The mesosphere, and the thermosphere inside our torus field. This top bit is what mainstream science calls the Van Allen belt. This is the Van Allen belt, this toroidal field. Right? They tell us there's a field of energy that they cannot go past called the Van Allen belt. This is it. By the way, they also tell us that there are 5 Van Allen belts in the universe. So that's the 4 of the worlds, the 5th one being the outermost one. They also tell us that our universe is covered with cosmic background microwave radiation, which is basically a torus field. So they're telling us that the whole universe is inside a torus field. Cosmic background radiation, electromagnetism. So again, they're telling us the truths, but in a twisted way so that we don't figure out exactly what it is. Okay? So that is what it would look like from our perspective. Right. I also hypothesize that these toroidal fields have got different motions that they're moving at. Okay? So science tells us that the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour on its axis. Yeah? and then it's spinning at 67,000 miles an hour around the sun, and then it's spinning at 490,000 miles an hour in the universe. Again, there is some truth in that. So it's not a complete lie. So the terra firma we're standing on is obviously not spinning, but the toroidal fields around us are spinning, okay? So I've depicted it here on this cross section, okay? So here, we've got the pyramid Bhumandala, we've got the toroidal fields going around each of the lands, over and underneath, right? 1 at the center, 2 where we are, 3 on the outside worlds, and the 4th one on the furthest out worlds, okay? Our toroidal field is probably moving at 1,000 miles an hour, that vortex. And this toroidal field, which is being powered, well, all of them are being powered by that cosmic vortex that we talked about in the beginning. This is the engine room that's powering the energy of all these toroidal fields, right? Because that runs straight through the middle, okay? So that's moving at 1,000 miles an hour on its axis, which is that axis, just like mainstream science tells us. The next toroidal field is moving at 67,000 miles an hour around our sun, which I'll explain why in a minute. And the outer one is moving in our universe at 490,000 miles an hour, the last one. So if these figures are true, and my syncretism is true, or it's close, then this is what I think that means. Okay? Right. The next bit is I want to focus on, give me a sec, guys. Where have I put it? Our torus field and our Earth, where we are. Okay? So that's a cross section of it, the one that I was showing you earlier on. So that is where we would be, the terra firma, the Earth, where we're standing here. This would be the lands at the center, Eden, with its torus field, which mainstream science tells us quite clearly it's an electromagnetic field. At the center, at the North Pole, there's an electromagnetic field, which is the torus field, powered by the sun, so they say. So they're telling us there's a torus field at the center, okay? And this is the Van Allen belt that they tell us about, right? And then we've got the 4 atmospheres: troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, like I said earlier on. Underneath us is Earth, right? This is the ground. The crust, the mantle, inner core, outer core. And the waters and everything else sit above on the terra firma, okay? Right. Each of these lands with the 4 different toroidal fields has got a sun and a moon. All of the lands have a sun and a moon, okay? So, if we were to look at it like that, right? If that was the top of our toroidal field, from the top, this is where we live, okay? Our torus field, our sun and moon, is the sun and moon that we see every day, that revolves around our torus field. These outer lands have got their own sun and moon, which are Mars and Venus, okay? This outer land, they've got their own sun and moon as well, which is Saturn and Jupiter, the planets Saturn and Jupiter. The center is the only one that's an exception, because the sun and moon there are androgynous, and that's the planet Mercury. So Mercury is both a sun and a moon, okay, at the center. So now we've got the 7 wandering planets. Mercury at the center, inside the sun, like mainstream science tells us, right? You've got the moon, the sun, on the outside, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn being the last one. So, Saturn, Mars, and Apollo are suns, right? On the other side, you've got our moon, Venus, and Jupiter, which are moons, okay? And they've got their respective duties or things that they do, which I'll explain a little bit later, okay? So I'll try and put this together so you can kind of see what it looks like inside the egg. Okay? So now we have the universe. Okay? I don't know if you can see it properly. Hopefully you can. Let's put it down a little bit so you can see that. And here it is. Okay? That's the top of the Bhumandala. And this is the top half of all the torus fields. Of course, they run through the bottom as well, with the different suns and moons revolving around these torus fields in each of the lands. So, when NASA says they're going to Mars, and they plan to go to Mars, they are telling the truth. Mars are these outside lands, the outer lands, where Mars is the sun. Right? That is where Mars is. So they are planning to go to these outside worlds at some point. They're saying at the moment they can't get past the Van Allen belt, but at some stage they will be able to. And again, I'll explain why. Okay? So this is where Mars is. So outer space does exist. So all flat earthers out there saying that outer space doesn't exist, it does. But it's just been usurped. It's not physically going to Mars itself, the sun, Mars, the luminary. That's ridiculous. It's going to these lands where Mars is the sun. That's what they're trying to tell us. Okay? So I'm going to try and stay on track here. Sometimes I get a bit. So that's what the cross section would look like. Okay? You would have the Bhumandala over there, different toroidal fields, Mercury, androgynous at the center, Sun and Moon in ours, Mars and Venus in the outer one, Saturn and Jupiter on the outside, moons and the suns, Sun and Moon at the center. Okay? I think that the suns, Saturn, Mars, and our sun, they revolve. Show you. Okay? They spiral around these torus fields. Okay? Upwards and spiral outwards and down. That's what the sun does. I think the moon follows a linear orbit. I don't think it spirals. I think it just follows one orbit. Or if it does spiral, it's a much slower, slower orbit up and down. And I'll explain why again a bit later. But I think for sure, the sun and moon, this is what creates our times, our seasons. When the sun is up here at the center, this is when the northern hemisphere have their summers, because the sun is directly above them, above the North Star, above Polaris at the center. When it's out here, spiraling at the edges, this is when the people of the southern hemisphere have their summers.
Okay, so that was part one. And that goes into a part two, as you can see over here. It's actually at the end of part two when Santos comes in. And then you can see this show down here, Martin Kenny, Cosmic Egg Universe Analysis by Santos Bonacci. So there are 3 shows to watch there if anyone is interested in watching that. And next I would like to share with you, Martin has a friend, Norb Chufis, who contacted Martin and asked if he could do this digital representation of Martin's model. And there is a beginning words in here where Norb does state to us to regard some of the scales and land placements within his model here as just being a necessary part of the only way that he was able to do some representations just for pictorial images. And this I'm going to play here is the section of adding in also the Aryan race within Martin took us through just the Atlantean landmass. There is also a landmass that's the Aryan landmass, which is inward from us at this time. So in each of these land masses are different races that are formed. So I'm going to play also probably about 20 minutes approximately, maybe a little less, of the different root races from the master race in the middle of Mount Meru, where humanity is stated to have come from, and likely all life is formulated from this central point here, the Polarian beings. So and we're going to listen to Norb here as he works with Martin's work that he put together in this pictorial form here.
Live. We propose that the Polarians are able to transverse between the two worlds, the heavens or spiritual realms above and earth/physical planes below. Anyway, these Polarians began the human race at pole position. They were the very first forms of earthly beings to manifest on this plane. All the other four root races were seeded by the Polarians, hence the term master race. We could also call the Polarians the guardians of the earth. So this first Polarian epoch, or first 24,000 years, centered around the cosmic tree of life, was regulated by the grand heavenly first and largest solar system, Neptune and Uranus, the highest and first two wandering stars, or sun and moon, of our universe, albeit semi-ethereal in nature. And at the end of their epoch, the Polarians completed their first cycle or circle of cosmic time, 24,000 years of experience. This was the end of their epoch. At this point, the Polarians created their very first physical manifestation, and so the Hyperboreans realm and root race are created. A new physical paradigm emerges, unfolding out of the North Polar Center Axis, aka the very first ripple. We could also say the tree of life gave birth to its first physical fruit or seed. This process is what we might call a pole shift, the very first pole shift of our Earth. This new Hyperborean realm comes complete with its own solar system to regulate its physical space, time, and matter. The very first sun and moon are also created, Jupiter and Saturn. However, at this stage, they are androgynous. They are one. They are not separated. They only separate at the end of their epoch. This is the first domain to experience fully physical earthly space, time, and matter, all regulated by the very first earthly solar system. This Hyperborean realm that unfolded out of the center pillar was the very first Garden of Eden, surrounding the Tree of Life, or Mount Meru, at the center. Keep this in mind for the rest of the creation process. Every time a new ripple comes out, it is the new Garden of Eden. Over the next 24,000 years, during their epoch, the Hyperborean realm was gradually pushed outward away from the center as a new realm and physical root race was created. The second ripple, the Lemurian realm and root race, is seeded. A second pole shift, and again a new paradigm emerges, pushing the old Hyperborean realm outwards and away from the central pillar or tree of life. This is also where Saturn, aka Kronos, and Jupiter, aka Rhea, separate and start their orbit. This second realm, the Lemurians, also get their own sun and moon, which is at that point in time also androgynous, a sun and moon in one, which will in 24,000 years be known as Mars and Venus. During this epoch, the Lemurians are the Garden of Eden, and Mars and Venus, the androgynous sun and moon, regulates its cycles, seasons, and ages of this new realm and domain. Don't forget, the Lemurians were also seeded from the Polarians, the master root race, and not the Hyperboreans going inward. All races were created and seeded from the Polarians. So the Lemurian realm is the second Garden of Eden, and again, after a cyclical time, when their epoch ends, they too were pushed outward to make way for the third root race. the Atlantean realm and root race is seated. This is pole shift number 3. Mars and Venus now separate into 2 and start their orbits. This new Atlantean realm, like the previous 2, was seated with its own androgynous sun and moon that will eventually turn into Apollo, our sun, and Artemis, our moon, to regulate and control the cycles, seasons, and ages of that realm. This Atlantean root race and realm is the one we currently inhabit. All human races in this realm of Earth are predominantly Atlanteans. You are an Atlantean. During this Atlantean epoch, we in this realm were the Garden of Eden at the center. And once again, over cyclical time, 24,000 years, history repeats itself. Atlantis fell, or rather sank, when the Great Deluge or Flood happened, and reset us from the center to where we currently are, also finally setting Apollo and Artemis into their orbit. And so the Aryan root race was seeded out from the 4th and most recent pole shift. This is the current Garden of Eden. And to give us a point on our timeline, this Aryan root race and realm was seeded about 6,000 years ago to join the human race. And as our fractal pattern continues, just like the realms before it, the Aryan realm was birthed with its own solar system, Mercury, its androgynous sun and moon, to regulate and control the cycles, seasons, and ages of that new domain. And so, here we are, 6,000 years into the Aryan or 5th epoch. In summary, we have 5 epochs so far. The Master Race, the Polarians, 24,000 years later, the Hyperborean realm was created. 24,000 years after that, the Lemurian realm was created, then the Atlantean, then the Aryan. And according to many ancient scriptures, mythologies, and mystics, there are 2 more epochs to come, meaning 7 epochs, 7 earthly realms, and 7 root races. Moving on. You'll also notice in this realm of Earth we are currently in, there are 4 main races. All the other races in between are mixed races, or rather mixes of these 4 sub and root races. The black races have their DNA lineage from the very first Earth root race, the Hyperboreans. All native black cultures of this realm predominantly have their cultural beliefs and practices handed down by the Hyperborean root race, sometimes referred to as the Anunnaki. The Oriental Asian races have their DNA lineage from the second root race, the Lemurians, and likewise, the Oriental cultures stem their beliefs and practices from the Lemurian root race, commonly and mistakenly referred to as the Reptilians. The Indo-Asian races have their DNA and lineage from the third root race, the Atlanteans. The Indo-Asians naturally stem their beliefs and practices from the Atlantean root race of their current realm. The Indo-Asians naturally stem their beliefs and practices from the Atlantean root race of this current realm. This means the Indo-Asians or Vedic Indian races are the original root race lineage of this Atlantean realm. And the white races have their DNA lineage from the most recent 4th root race, the Aryans. And of course, most of the white cultural influences we see today are seeded from the Aryan root race currently at the center, Garden of Eden. The Aryans are what most religious texts and mythologies refer to as the current gods, or sometimes fallen angels. The Aryans are also sometimes confused with the Palladians, aka Polarians, who are semi-ethereal beings that live at the very center, Mount Meru, and not in the current Aryan Eden realm. Now, although we in this realm all appear to be different races within our different sub and mixed race lineage and traits, we are actually one race. This is due to the mixing of genetic codes over time. We are all predominantly Atlantean humans, only with slight genetic variances, most notably skin pigmentation, hair structure, eye color, and cultural and religious programs. In fact, most of the racial and religious divisions and wars fought today have their roots seeded from past wars between the 4 root races. We Atlanteans in this realm inherited our predisposed prejudices of one another from outside influences. Now, we hypothesize that all the other Earth realms would have many different multicultural sub and mixed races in their own domains, just like we have in this realm. Meaning, there are probably thousands of different sub and mixed races and cultures within the different domains across the entire plane of our Earth. But, fundamentally, every root, sub, and mixed race on Earth is of Polarian origin. Every physical conscious being in existence on Earth is of Polarian origin, with all the various solar systems and extraterrestrial civilizations divided and separated from one another by the various toroidal electromagnetic fields, aka the Van Allen belts. These electromagnetic belts do periodically open and close or weaken and strengthen dependent on the various universal and cosmic cycles, seasons, and ages. This periodically happens to allow the sharing or rebalancing of conscious energy, technology, and knowledge between all the different earthly dimensional realms. And we are fast approaching the next opening of these electromagnetic barriers. This opening event will be a revelation that will impact us all in this realm, collectively and individually. We can already see the birthing pains of this great cosmic event with the current so-called conscious awakening and unusual weather patterns. Moving on, we must remember that these physical constructs we call bodies are just that. They are bodies, vehicles, avatars that carry the real, living, Polarian conscious energy or spirit being within it. This conscious energy within us that is here experiencing, learning, growing, and sharing is what some might call a spirit or a soul. This is the real you, your soul, your conscious energy. And we all know energy has no color or race or nationality or prejudices, just polarity, positive energy, good vibes or people or souls, and negative energy, bad vibes, people or souls. And as such, the human race is just part of the temporary physical journey, individually and collectively, what many in modern times term as the matrix, or what the ancients called the Maya, the illusion. Next, let's explore exactly how cosmic epochs and ages work, using the current Aryan epoch calendar as our reference. You'll notice the outside rings note our months of the year, as well as our 12 zodiac signs. The 12 solar months are actually a microcosmic reflection of the 12 zodiac constellations. These 12 zodiac constellations are our heavenly cosmic clock rotating above us. As they rotate, each constellation has its own energies that subconsciously influence and help guide us consciously here on the earthly plane, both individually and collectively. These 12 months are further divided into our 4 seasonal sections: autumn, winter, spring, and summer, which in cosmic terms are known as the 4 seasons of conscious evolution. These conscious seasons are what the Greeks called the 4 ages of man and Vedic scriptures called the Yuga ages. These 4 Yuga ages are the Golden Age, Satya Yuga, Silver Age, Treta Yuga, Bronze Age, Dwapara Yuga, and Iron Age, Kali Yuga. A full epoch, 24,000 years, is broken up into 8 Yuga ages. Therefore, each Yuga age is 3,000 years. You'll also notice there are more golden or yellow ages than any other. This is because the golden ages mirror the sun's presence during the course of our 12 calendar month solar season. So as you can see, lots of sunshine in the summer, a little less in autumn and spring, and little to none in winter. Of course, sunshine in this case is translated into conscious intelligence. And obviously, the Yuga ages of our universal summer are much higher states of consciousness than the Yuga ages of the spring, autumn, and certainly winter ages. We also hypothesize that when golden ages overlap within different realms, there are no torus fields or separation between those particular realms. This means that when the time comes and the golden ages overlap, all lands that overlap can be crossed in and out of. In other words, those particular domains are open and free to interact without restriction. This is because they are oscillating at the same golden ratio of frequency or resonance. So, let's now map the universal, cosmic, and solar timelines of all the individual realms or domains. Mainstream science tells us that the Iron Age began about 6,000 years ago, which mirrors the reset point here.
Okay, so from this point here, I am next going to take us into having Martin talk about, oh, wrong one here, this one. Martin had an interview with Mike Williams on Sage of Quay Radio, and he did a presentation on the cosmic clock that Norb there was talking about. So That is a clock that Martin also put together after the cosmic egg theory model. And in this cosmic clock here, Martin's going to go a little bit deeper into how change-ups happen and where we are currently at in regards to potentially another reset coming. And I am emphasizing this here as being significant because most certainly quarter after the number 815 in different movies is, I've seen it in multiple other places already. It actually is the time on the clock in Storybrooke in the Netflix series Once Upon a Time. Anyone who's watching that, note that the clock has stopped at 8:15. And that is when, of course, the Dark Curse was enacted and brought all the Storybrooke characters to storylines where they have forgotten who they are and they need to, quote unquote, wake up. So those are universal truths that get played out. Now, what I would like to emphasize, even as we're communicating about this here and thinking about it, is even in the stories in Once Upon a Time, it is emphasized that there are people who stay awake, and in the stories that we see, the people are evil who are awake and have come in and set up shop. So there is something to the higher beings who have been in a golden age, and they see a young age is going to open up, which in itself probably draws anyone from other places who is devolving in general. But if they're going to be moved out to that with higher awareness, part of them knowing how to stay awake during these catastrophic recycle events that take place and maintain their memories is something that can be done. So here, let's listen to Martin talking about his cosmic clock theory.
Right. We were the crater continent at the center. Or maybe not crater, we were the mountain at the center. And then something happened to create a crater. And this is the sinking of Atlantis.
Okay.
Okay.
So when they speak about Atlantis, what we're really saying is it's that time when the Atlanteans were the Garden of Eden.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when they say the Atlantean era, that was amazing, and these Atlantean beings were the height, they were the masters of the universe. They were the most advanced race of beings on the universe because they were at the center during the last epoch.
Okay.
So they would have been, obviously.
And this also reminds me of the story of Adam and Eve being kicked out of the Garden of Eden. So that sounds to me that maybe what that means is the 24,000 years were up.
Yep.
And the Atlanteans moved out to the next ring because the Aryans were created. I know we'll get into the Aryans, but okay. So I that was my thought. So I'm tracking okay here?
Brilliantly put, Mike. Excellently put. That is exactly what that allegory is. When they say that Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve weren't two physical beings called Adam and Eve, obviously. It's an allegory telling us that the beings that were at the center in the Garden of Eden were pushed outward, away from the center, out from the Garden of Eden. But not just the beings, but the physical realm itself as well. This now brings us to the current epoch, the Aryan epoch, right? So at some stage, that Atlantean realm, not some stage, about 6,000 years ago, right? The Atlantean realm was pushed out from the center, right? A big pole shift happened in this realm. We were pushed out, to this ring, right? Okay, this is a bit more complex now, but I'll explain what all this is, okay? So this is what I was showing you before. This would be Mount Meru at the center. This would be the new Aryan realm that was seeded 6,000 years ago, the new Garden of Eden. This is our realm, right? The next realm that was pushed outward 6,000 years ago. This is the Lemurian realm, this one here. And this one is the Hyperborean realm, the outer one, right? The rings being pushed out concentrically. Okay? So 6,000 years ago, pole shift happens. Aryan realm is created. The Aryan beings come into play. Okay? So right now, we are in the 4th epoch. Right? And this 4th epoch is known as the Aryan epoch. This is where we are.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Right. Let's now get into the meat and bones of what an epoch is, or how these cosmic epochs work, rather. Let's start from the center. So everything always begins at the center, the Polarian realm, the yin and yang, where everything is balanced, where the gods live, Mount Olympus, right? Where the Olympians are, the angels, okay? This realm, the next realm, the Aryan realm, is divided, or the time, or this 24,000 cycle, is divided into 4. Just like our everyday clock is also divided into 4. 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Okay? You could also put the 4 months of the year into this, right? Autumn, winter, spring, summer. Midnight, okay? That would be dawn, which is spring. You're springing into dawn, okay? That would be midday, right? Which is summer, which is gold. And that would be sunset, where the reset happens from. Set, the god Set in Egypt. This is it, right? At 12 o'clock, or 1800 hours, sorry. Is that making sense?
Well, you said 1800 hours would be 6 o'clock position.
6 o'clock, sunset. So if you're looking at the 24-hour clock, because there are 2 clocks within this, sorry, I should have said that.
Yeah.
You've got the 12-hour clock on the outside, and you've got the 24-hour clock on the inside.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay.
Right? So on the 12-hour clock, it is 12 o'clock, right? It's midday on the big clock. But on the 24-hour clock, it's 1800 hours, sunset. It's where the reset happens, meridian, where the epoch starts and ends, the pole shift.
I see. Okay.
Okay, on the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
That's why 12 o'clock is always, the clocks, strikes 12. That's where the bell rings. Ding.
Right.
Right, that's where that comes from. Right, okay. Now, within each realm, so I've showed you how it's divided into 4. I've syncretized the 4. It's also divided into what's known as 4 ages, the 4 Yuga ages. Right? So the universe has something called the 4 Yuga ages. And these ages are not ages of physical evolution. They are ages of conscious evolution. Okay? So the whole cosmic clock, the whole universe, all the realms, right, experience something called the Great Yuga Ages. The Yuga Ages are the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. And of course, I'm sure you can discern, the Iron Age is when our consciousness is at the lowest, collectively. And then it slowly ascends into the Bronze Age, then into the Silver Age, and finally into the Gold Age. And then we have a reset back to Iron Age, and the cycle or the clock continues to turn.
So when it goes from gold, it drops right into the Iron Age, Martin. So
Absolutely.
There's no smooth transition. It just, boom, drops into iron.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So in the whole universe, on the whole cosmic clock, the whole 24,000 years, in all the universes, when we have our reset at sunset, right, the first 6,000 years, the whole universe is in universal Iron Age. Right? Everyone is in the Iron Age. cosmic Iron Age. When it hits the 24-hour mark, right, we then start to ascend into, or we shift, rather, not ascend, we shift into the cosmic Bronze Age for another 6,000 years. Right? 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock, Iron Age, 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, Bronze Age, 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, we get into the Silver Age, and then 9 o'clock back to 12 o'clock, we're in the Golden Age.
Okay.
And then reset, post shift. We start again. New realm is birthed, Iron Age, Bronze Age, Silver Age, Golden Age. And that is the clock of time.
So within the I'm sorry, Martin. So within the macro ages, I'll call them the macro ages that you just described, underneath that, there are ages which are subsets of the overall age?
So that's what I'm going to get into next.
Okay,
right?
okay.
So those are the grand Yuga ages, the big macro ages, if you like, that all the realms experience simultaneously. Now, there's also something called the small Yuga ages, the small cycles, that each realm experiences individually. Okay? So those 4 ages, the gold, silver, bronze, and iron, are experienced by each realm individually as well. For instance, right, when this epoch began, this Aryan epoch 6,000 years ago here, the Aryans began with the Iron Age at reset. Right, they had to begin with the Iron Age, like we said. Right, so that was the first age they experienced when they were created. This is the story we're told of Avatar. Right, when these beings were near the tree of life, were invaded and destroyed by the outer beings, by the outside beings. That's the story that Avatar is trying to tell us.
Okay.
In plain sight.
All right.
Because they were in the Iron Age, these Aryans. Right? But over time, they started to slowly ascend. Okay? Now, these smaller Iron Ages change every 3,000 years. So every 3,000 years, we go from iron to bronze to silver to gold. Right? So the small Yuga ages are 3,000 years long each. So the first 3,000 years of this epoch, the Aryans were in the Iron Age. After 3,000 years, they shifted into their Bronze Age. Right? And this is where they've been for the last 3,000 years. Because this is where we are now. We're here. Can you see it?
Yep, I can see it.
Right? This is where we are.
Yep.
Interestingly, mainstream tells us that there is something called doomsday clock. Right? And in January this year, they moved the clock to 2 minutes to midnight.
2,400 hours, yep.
Right? So they're telling us we're 2 minutes away from midnight. Okay? This is where we are. We're here. 2,400 hours on the 24-hour clock, 3 o'clock on the 12-hour clock. We're about to shift. We're in the winter. Right? This is why we're all so lost and confused and don't know what's happening. Our consciousness is so low because within the universe, we're in the winter at the moment.
Okay. So the 2 minutes, would that be a reference to 2 years?
2 years away. Yeah, 2 years away. We're 2 years away from midnight.
I see.
Okay? So, obviously midnight being 2020, according to my calculations, my theory.
Okay.
Okay? So, this would be our realm. Now, I've depicted all these individual smaller ages with these stars. I've put the purple stars to depict the Iron Ages. I put the red stars to depict the Bronze Ages, blue for silver, yellow for gold. Okay? Now, all these realms do not all shift at the same time in the same ages, these smaller ages. Okay? It happens like a clock that is slowly turning. And the clock first turns at the center. So the central realm is the one that experiences the first cycle of time in that epoch. In other words, when the reset happens and this realm was birthed, the Aryans were the first one to experience the first Aryan Iron Age. These other three realms, us, the realm outside and the realm outside that, were still in the golden age of the Atlantean epoch. We hadn't shifted yet.
So, Martin, when you birth out, or when the races, I should say, the races birth out from the center, do they always start in the Iron Age?
Yes, always start in the Iron Age. That's always the first age.
I see.
Always. But these ones were still in the golden age of the last epoch, of the Atlantean epoch. Okay?
Okay.
Now, when the 3,000 years had elapsed, after 3,000 years, the clock changed, right? And these Aryans shifted into their Bronze Age, the Aryan Bronze Age. This is when we, in this realm, had our reset. This is when the flood happened, the great deluge, for us. This was when our little mini reset happened for us, to begin our Aryan Iron Age. Is that making sense?
You mean the Atlantean Iron Age?
No, the Aryan. We now left the Atlantean Golden Age. We now entered the Aryan Iron Age. The Aryan epoch. So here, we weren't yet in the Aryan epoch. We're still in the Atlantean epoch.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I'm a little confused. So, okay, so we're in the Iron Age now, so why would it not be the Atlantean Iron Age? I guess that's where I'm stuck.
Because we're now in the Aryan epoch.
Oh, I see. Overall,
okay. The whole thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Overall.
Okay. I've got it. Okay.
So this is when we began this new epoch. So over here, technically, even though the cosmic clock had shifted, we were still back in time. We were still backwards in time. We're still in the Atlantean epoch. So the Aryans began the Aryan race, the Aryan epoch. They started it. They led it. And then we followed 3,000 years later because we're the next ripple outwards. So they sent out the Aryan energy, if you like, from the center to us, right? For us to begin our Aryan epoch.
I see.
And of course, just like them, we started the race in the Iron Age, 3,000 years ago. This is when the deluge happened, the great flood. The flood reset, changed everything. Right? Because everything that was Atlantean had to be washed away. The old must die for the new to be born.
Okay, so that's what we were talking about before, the question I asked. We were in the gold and then reset right into the Iron Age.
Boom.
Yep.
Reset. Start again. Right? Start fresh. And this is where we are. And when this happened, this is when some of the Aryans came into our realm and seeded the current white race, if you like. This is when the angels came and had children with the sons and daughters of men. Right? You hear about these angels that came and had sex with humans. Right? It's also possibly during the last epoch, if you want to rewind, when we were at the center, the Anunnaki came here and seeded the black race. That's why the Anunnaki built their bases in Africa. All Anunnaki history is based in Africa. This is why. Right? Lemurians, when it was the Lemurian thing, they came and they seeded the Oriental races. So you can see all this interdimensional mixing and exchange of energy and DNA and et cetera, that happens periodically. Okay?
Yep.
So this is where we are now. Okay? Now, when this happened, of course, when we fell, they moved up to bronze. We were now in the iron. These two realms were still in the old Atlantean golden epoch. They have not shifted yet. They've not yet had the Aryan ripple out to them. So they were still back in time, or still are back in time.
Okay.
They've not yet joined the Aryan race.
How does this play into time travel?
Time travel, absolutely. Yeah, we'll talk about that again. What that means, yeah.
All right.
So, right now where we are here, we're about to have another shift, or we are going through another shift right now. The Aryans, right, are now shifting into the Silver Age, into their Silver Age. Okay? And we are now shifting into our Bronze Age. So Aryan Silver Age, Aryan Bronze Age. Right?
Yep.
These beings on the outside, of course, what's going to happen to them? What's happening to them?
Right, the Lemurians will shift down to iron.
Iron, right? Reset. History repeats itself.
Mm-hmm.
So they're now having their reset. When I did this wheel, something struck me. I remembered something and I was like, wow, that explains it. Do you remember in 2015 when we heard those crazy sounds in the skies all over the world?
Yes.
Right? And people were saying, what the hell is that? It sounded like some sort of metal or something was crashing or cracking or breaking in the skies, right?
Right.
And no one knew what it was. All over the world we're hearing these sounds. People were recording these sounds. I think these Aryans were having their reset. This was the apocalypse happening out here, physical apocalypse. Resetting from gold to iron. They were having their flood, their whatever, catastrophe, to reset them, wipe out, start again.
Okay, so what we were hearing, what was being recorded, was an event that was taking place outside of our ring.
I absolutely think so, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because no one has given an explanation yet. I'm giving an explanation now. I'm saying I think that's what it was. Okay? And it's sinking in with my clock. Anyway.
Yeah.
However, this Saturnian realm, the Hyperborean realm, they've still obviously got one more gold age to go, one more Atlantean gold age to go. So Saturn will rule for another 3,000 years. Hyperborean realm. Not rule, but they'll still be in the golden age. They have not yet joined the Aryan age.
I see. So this is exactly like a water droplet hitting a body of water where it moves out. It's not all happening simultaneously. There is a delay in the shift. Okay.
Absolutely.
So that was fascinating. Let me pick this up here a little bit. So for me, I could watch that presentation, which I have already, over and over again for how it answers so many different questions that I've had over time. I believe I can also pull up this picture here, put myself down here. So as Martin was explaining here, and he goes on to show that as an age is birthed, it tends to look like rings on a tree, hence calling this the tree of life in the middle here, and rippling out to the outer realms. And these areas here, when certain time frames happen, are when the veils between dimensional spaces get thinner and we have a big reset experience. So this brings in a lot of information from Martin Lidke. It brings in information from Sunbow, talking about different reset experiences that have taken place, extinction events even. So I'm starting to see that as we are functioning within these different planes of reality, these other planes still exist. And this is how we have memories of these other time frames from traversing through these different experiences and being so connected. And these are, in a sense, like big time frames where they're referring to as this big portal is opening at this time, a different type of portal. And theoretically, what I seem to be feeling is happening in this time frame, for example, coming up in 2020, as Martin is talking about. And again, Jay referred to this as a plasma event, and Sylvie Ivanova talked about how we have these different types of structures all over our geographical landscape. And how do we answer for these things? Well, this is how we have these different types of structures here in terraforming, because these other realms out here are different frequencies, they operate differently, and they have different forms. So we want to keep that in mind then for when Sunbo was talking about how there were different forms in the beginning when our Earth was simply a liquid form. So this, of course, as we can see, as Martin talked about, that it's going to continue for 7 different epochs. That still doesn't add up to millions of years or billions of years. So consequently, we can potentially even look at this, I might propose, as only being one set of 7, and that this erases itself and then starts all over again with a new series of 7 built upon another set of experiences. So that is the reason why we can see that it's very difficult to narrow down to us all having the same memories, because we have so much DNA in us from the beginning of these epochs here, when we were Polarian only and then came into these physical experiences. And of course, people are aware that, you know, Santos has talked about this, once you go all the way out, you can't go all the way back in to the beginning into different planes of reality within the heavens, but it's a resonance frequency that you have to be able to achieve. And that's a little bit of a key. So I would say that, as you know, this was finishing up here, he said that this was when we were in Atlantis here and finished up our Atlantean age, and now we are in this Aryan age that crosses over here. So this is the Aryan race, and then we begin our influence, and we are basically in the Aryan epoch right now. But we have all of these other mixed experiences in here still from these other planes of reality. And it appears that this reset does happen to everyone within here, but at the same time, we're very aware that there are different octaves of this experience here, and that we have different expressions and everything mixing in here. As Martin goes on to talk about, he talks about how Pisces was a time frame of more dividedness as we move towards Aquarius. So we're going from this iron time frame into this bronze time frame here. There's going to be more mixing. So there has to be an opportunity for us to view many different choices. And that's basically what's taking place here. My theory also is that whenever we approach a cycle like this that is so big in completion, we are going towards a 9 in a sense. Anything that's going to complete in a cycle is still a relative of 9. well, we are going to have a review of, we are going to always tend to meet, I think, our own similarities as well as our own opposites. So a lot of people have talked about in here, approaching this time frame of 2020, that we are cautious with how we view reality in a very divided aspect, and of course a judgmental aspect. Now, I think judgmental attitudes have gotten a little bit confused, because people are bringing the aspects of don't judge anything. Well, that means you're not going to make a discernment, and you're throwing out your better judgment, in my opinion. We do make a discerning observation of something. So in my opinion here, the more extreme that you still are in this Iron Age as we approach this time frame here, you are going to be polarized with your exact opposite, so that you can make and have an opportunity before this Bronze Age clicks here to make this transition with everyone. So in my opinion then, you know, I kind of think that people maybe shift realities here. So let's say, you know, it's very possible that when these planes of reality being separated, the doors are open, the portals are open. If you have extreme polarities in here, maybe you're not strong enough to be maintained in the Bronze Age, and perhaps you experience then your own shift out into an Iron Age, and you remain in the Iron Age there, but in a different experience. And that might be part of what happens in us forgetting who we are if we don't come to a higher state of consciousness and move along. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that with Martin when he comes on. He has some really beautiful ideas about it. I share his theology and ideologies on how to be discerning, be truthful in our observances, but also understand, you know, as well have our boundaries, that if we are very extreme, it's not going to fit into a higher state of consciousness and more openness. And so Martin is talking about those different, what he calls it, codes of contact, which are frequencies per each of these different realms. So these are different realms. Okay, so I'm going to stop the screen share here and close up shop. So thank you everyone for staying along in this show and listening to Martin as he presented his cosmic egg universe and his cosmic clock theories that he has formulated from syncretism, putting together, as he mentioned, all of these other ancient literatures, ideas, mythology, scriptures, studies from the Bible, and some science, in order to help us to understand how it is that we are traveling here in between realms at times, and how we have had experiences in the past of living in golden ages when we were traveling from one realm to another easily through portals. Okay, so as he said, that's why they're talking about going to Mars, with the exception that we have to be careful in understanding. And we'll talk a little bit more about this because, you know, as Jay talked about, when he sees that our firmament is going to be opening up, these Van Allen belts are loosening, what effect that might have maybe on melting some of the ice walls, and there's a plasma exchange happening. He believes that they may be getting into ships and hightailing it out of here. Well, where are they going to be going? If they do not have the resonance frequency to maintain themselves in a higher vibrational realm, then they would probably be plummeted back in the experience, in the natural event, to a lower level space where they left their memories, and perhaps they're attempting to stay outside of the range of them getting their memories erased. So again, we will talk more about memories being erased, why that happens. Is there a purpose for it? Is it something that they put in themselves with high technology in order to confuse us, or is that part of the natural experience that happens? And how is it that the dark energies maintain their memories? Okay, going to be stopping here and saying goodnight to everyone. Thank you for joining me in this show, and I will see you all next week. Bye-bye now.